The Final Four is set. Which one seed is going to cut down the net?
Is NIL and the transfer portal era calling for March Madness to rebrand?
What is the current outlook for Hokies basketball with player losses and coaching gains in the offseason?
Meanwhile, the Hokies make history on the diamond. What's up next for baseball and softball after they both swept ranked teams this past weekend?
All that and more on this week's edition of the 3304 Sports Studio Show. I'm your host, Sarah Luttenberger, and alongside me, Riley Klaus is in the house. And Riley, all 4 one seeds have made the Final Four. Can you call it madness?
It's more looking like something I would use in 3rd grade near the playground, which is chalk. As we have all one seeds, it's gotten really the formula so far. The only other perspective you could say here, Sarah, though, is maybe that means we did truly get the 4 best teams to compete in the madness, and really, hopefully there's some great Final Four games if that really has not been what we've seen so far.
I would agree with that. I'm looking forward to Duke Houston. But I will say I'm a big stats girly, so I got one for you here. On average, the sum of the Final Four every year is 13. That usually accounts for one Cinderella, like 10-seed NC State last year. In 2023, when 4-seed UConn won the national championship, the total was 23, and that was 4 UConn, 5 San Diego State, 5 Miami, and 9 FAU.
That was a good one.
This year, the sum is 4. So, in my opinion, I think you could call of this madness just because it's nowhere near the average. However, a lot of people are concerned that this is the future, where March Madness is going now that the Power 5 can use NIL to kind of poach the star players of small schools, throw money at them, the rich get richer, and, you know.
Yeah, that's really the discussion to be had, because even if you back it up, right, to like the Sweet 16, we didn't have any mid-major schools in the top 16 in the end of the tournament. And I think a big reason for that you kind of mentioned as well, transfer portal is huge. As all these players, if you're a star at a small school, why wouldn't you go compete at the highest level if you really think you're going to be there? And so we're seeing less and less 4-year players go through that. I think there can always be magical teams that just will their way through, but it certainly has been a little bit of a shift in the landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will just have to wait and see what the sum of the Final Four drops to in the next few years. But in the meantime, I know what I'll be doing Saturday night for sure. And in the wake of this uncertainty, we also have some changes coming from for Hokies basketball specifically. And so far, the women have lost Lonnie White, Maya Hazelton, and Ramaya White to the transfer portal. And the men have so far lost Jaden Young, Brandon Recksteiner, Big Pat Wessler, Rodney Brown Jr., and Ryan Jones Jr. And so that is on top of course, the squads losing some essential seniors too.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge list. And that's kind of, honestly, I feel like, Sarah, the landscape of national basketball everywhere. As even last offseason for Virginia Tech, there were a lot of similar things. So I think if you're the Hokies, it's not a panic button at all. This is really, I think, going to be a more natural trend that we're going to see in college basketball. But they certainly have a lot of needs that they're going to need to address in the portal. Specifically on both sides, size, to me, is going to be big. I mean, you lose the likes of Rose Mishaw for the women's team and Elijah Poteet, and as you mentioned, Pat Wessler for the men's team. Both sides really going to need to pick up some size in the portal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree, but thankfully with these losses, there has already been one addition so far. To work alongside Mike Young, Virginia Tech has brought back Chester Frazier as the new associate head coach of the men's basketball team. And for more on the Hokies' new hire, we're going to turn it over to Hayden Tolbert.
Familiar face returns to Blacksburg. Chester Frazier has been signed as the associate head coach once again for Virginia Tech basketball, marking an exciting step as the Hokies look to get back to relevancy in the ACC. During his first stint at Virginia Tech, Frazier helped coach Mike Young to a 3rd-place finish in the ACC and paved the way for an NCAA tournament appearance in 2021. That season, the Hokies ended up ranked 25th in the final Associated Press poll. But Frazier's success doesn't stop just there. He built an impressive resume with 3 other major programs, including Kansas State, the University of Illinois, and most recently, the very talented West Virginia team. With a Fighting alumni, Frazier helped lead his alma mater to an Elite 8 appearance in the 2024 NCAA tournament and a Big Ten tournament championship in that same year. As assistant coach under Brad Underwood, Frazier was part of a team that won 72 games in over 3 years. Pretty impressive, right? It seems the success follows Chester Frazier, and looking back to his first season with the Mountaineers, the same patterns of success are just as evident. In Morgantown, Frazier helped the Mountaineers post a solid 19-13 record, creating outroar as fans believed they were snubbed of an NCAA tournament bid. He was instrumental in key victories, including top 25 wins over number 3 Gonzaga, number 24 Arizona, number 7 Kansas, and number 2 Iowa State. Whew, that's pretty impressive, right? And on top of that, he assembled the number 23 recruiting class in 2025 in the recruiting cycle. So you're telling me that a guy that can coach, recruit, and over a decade of coaching experience in 3 of the 5 premier conferences in college basketball, talk about a home run hire for Mike Young and company, as they will surely get fans excited after a disappointing year for Virginia Tech. Now, looking ahead, the questions are simple. Can Coach Frazier bring back the top-tier recruits both through the transfer portal and high school? And can he help bring back a winning culture to a desperate and hungry Hokie Nation? Well, I guess we'll just have to see going into the next couple of months with Virginia Tech. Back to you guys.
Thanks so much, Hayden. And with that, the flowers are blooming, the weather is getting warm. But that does mean we have to say goodbye to basketball season. Sadness. However, that does mean baseball season is starting, and I honestly think that I'm getting warm, not so much because of the weather, but because the Hokies are cooking on the diamond.
That really is true, Sarah, as both teams, the baseball and softball, swept ranked opponents last weekend, which was big for both teams. And let's really start by honing in on the softball side of things. They're tied with Texas Tech, Sarah, with 15 shutouts this season, so the pitching has been incredible, and that's mostly because of Emma Lemley, for sure.
Absolutely. What she is doing is just remarkable. The Hokies are rolling, and it is not against just anybody. What she is doing, the numbers that she is putting up, is against ranked teams. Yeah. She had 16 strikeouts versus 22 Northwestern, and the third no-hitter of the season after back-to-back perfect games was versus 24 Liberty. What she is doing is, I mean, debatably unheard of. So if she keeps it up, there is not a doubt in my mind that Virginia Tech is going to be hosting a regional come May.
Yeah, that's going to be something to watch, and she for sure kept it going this last weekend as the ballpark was packed for the series against Stanford. Sam Mostow is here to take us through an eventful weekend on the diamond in Blacksburg that some would describe as absolute cinema.
Virginia Tech softball has a flair for the dramatic. The 11th-ranked Hokies swept 16th-ranked Stanford over the weekend, but if you were there, the final scores were merely a sideshow. They won all 3 games, but the more significant outcome was how they won, rather than the fact that they won. On Friday, star pitcher Emma Lemley tossed the first 6 frames, then head coach Pete DeMore subbed her out in favor of Sophie Kleiman. Kleiman obtained the first 2 outs, but surrendered 3 hits and a run and loaded the bases. DeMore then reinstated Lemley, who had already thrown 118 pitches, and she forced a ground out to end the game. A 4-3 one-run win is still a win, even if it nearly sent Tech Softball Park into cardiac arrest. Saturday's crowd went over the ballpark's capacity, and all 1,134 people there saw a show. Tech recovered from a 5-3 deficit in the 5th inning to roar ahead to an 8-7 win behind a home run from second baseman Rachel Castine. That's almost burying the lead, though. The Hokies turned the first triple play in program history in the top of the 6th. With runners on first and second, Lila Blackwell made a diving catch in left field, got up, hurled the ball to Castine at second base, who then rocketed another throw to first baseman Michelle Chatfield. The triple play was SportsCenter's top play that night, and for good reason. And, oh yeah, there was still another game to be played. The Hokies led up 3 runs in the 5th to tie the game at 5 runs apiece on Sunday. Enter Corey McMillan. The senior right fielder was Tech's first and only batter in the bottom of the 7th. She sent the second pitch she saw deep into the center field trees, ending the game and securing a sweep over a ranked team. Ranked wins are hard to find, ranked sweeps even more so. Tack on a midweek win over 24th-ranked Liberty on Wednesday, Virginia Tech has won 10 straight games, including the last 4 over ranked teams. The Hokies are playing their best softball and continuing to peak as conference play continues, which will only set them up well for the postseason in May. Back to you.
Great stuff, Sam. Softball isn't the only team, though, in Blacksburg that's really making some noise this spring. The Hokies have been laying the hammer down at English Field recently, and the baseball team seems to be picking up some momentum.
Absolutely. I mean, why have one sweep against a ranked team when you can have 2 in one weekend? The Hokies, and important to mention, they had come off of a ranked win versus Louisville the week prior. Then they marched into Winston-Salem, showed them who's boss. That game 1 was a 13-2 win for the Hokies. How about that? Someone must have told them that perfection was the expectation, because they also had 2 of those 3 games were perfect in terms of fielding percentage. They had 1 error across 3 games in the field, which is especially important in the case of the 3rd game, where they only won by 1. but their fielding percentage was perfect, and Wake Forest had 4 errors.
Yeah, it's been a team to watch this season. You look at the fielding percentage as well as improvements of players like Sam Tackett that have really stepped this team up. So let's hear a little bit more about this baseball team. Here's Pierce McKnight with a look at what's cooking in John Sheff's kitchen.
The hammering Hokies have finally figured it out, is what I said when I was listening to Evan Hughes call the big win on Sunday at War Memorial Gym. Then 2 days later, they lost to Radford, 8-1. To say the least, this season, the Hokies haven't been hitting the nail on the head with every swing. 13-4 is Virginia Tech's current non-conference record, which isn't bad because at the end of the day, conference games are what really matter. So let's look at the blueprint on what has already happened. Against Georgia Tech, 2 of Virginia Tech's nails bent at the last second. They gave up 2 runs in the 9th inning in each of these games, which led to them losing the series 2-1. Then the Hokies traveled to Raleigh for their second series, where they missed the nail completely, hitting their thumb instead. That couldn't have felt good. They got back on track right after that and built up a big win against the Wolfpack 20-8. Now stay with me here. These next set of nails are 16 inches long, so it's going to take a lot of strength to get these through. Virginia Tech had finally got some consistent strength to win a conference series as they defeated the Louisville Cardinals 2-1. A week later, the NCAA dropped a new style of hardware, and this time the 16-inch nails had the Wake Forest logo on the head. The Hokies smashed, and I mean absolutely smashed, Wake Forest with a weekend score of 30-10. The Maroon and Orange left Winston-Salem this past weekend with a big old broomstick, and they won all 3 games. Next up on the list for the Virginia Tech Hokies is the Irish this weekend. They look to have back-to-back sweeps on the road. Notre Dame is currently last in the ACC standings, which should shift the odds in the Hokies' favor. For what is on the rest of the blueprint, Virginia Tech will have 5 more ACC series after this weekend. These series are against Florida State, which is ranked first in the ACC, Duke, who has the same conference record as the Hokies, UVA and UNC, who are 500 in the Atlantic Coast, and then finally Pitt, who is third worst team in the conference. To say the least, there's a lot more handyman work to be done. All this construction work, and I didn't even tell you what they are building. The Hammering Hokies are building their future ACC Champions Trophy with all their wins on it. A lot more construction has to happen, and they hope it doesn't take as long as some of these buildings Virginia Tech says they're building. Their words, not mine. Back to you guys.
Awesome stuff, Pierce. Well, we're going to close the show out with a fan favorite segment from last year, as we take a trip around the bases to recap the top 4 moments of the Diamond season so far for Virginia Tech. I'm going to send it on over to Sarah as we make our way to first base.
And he steps in the box. The pitch, the swing, it's gone. And when I mean gone, I mean really gone. Give me Sam Tackett's 500-foot bomb versus Bucknell as our first for our top 4 plays.
Well, what a play. You mentioned Sam Tackett. Why not a robbery against Wake Forest as he jumps all the way up to the wall to make the grab? An incredible play from Mr. Tackett again.
And if we're talking triples, how about we talk about that triple play from this weekend for Virginia Tech versus Stanford? It was #1 in our Sports Center top 10 this weekend.
And what gets better than a walk-off? Corey McMillan steps into the box and sends it yard to get a dub against the Cardinal for Virginia Tech to end what was a phenomenal weekend in Blacksburg.
And that is going to do it for this week's edition of the 3304 Sports Studio Show. Thank you to our reporters Hayden Tolbert, Sam Mostow, and Pierce McKnight. Thank you to our crew behind the scenes and to my co-host Riley Klaus. I'm Sarah Luttenberger, and we'll see you next time.